Hey folks, how you doing? My name's Dave McRae. So the other day, Bruce and I did a live stream, episode 288 of McRae Live, where we dove into the nitty-gritty details of our thought process and why we made the creative decisions we did on many of the things in regards to the story and plot of It's Me, Billy Chapter 2. However, that's nearly a 3-hour live stream, and I know that not everybody has the time or the opportunity to sit and watch a 3-hour live stream, although I know some of you will, and you'll just turn it on like a podcast, which is amazing. But I thought, you know what? Let me take some of those more common questions that we've been asked over the last week or so here, because the movie's only been out a week and we're approaching 10,000 views. Amazing. Thank you so much. Our thumb up to thumb down ratio is a positive 99%, which is amazing. And I thought, you know, let me make a little more easily digestible video, a shorter video, at least shorter for me, of some of the more common questions we've been asked. So let's jump right into it, shall we? Oh, and by the way, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the movie, go watch the movie and then come back and watch this. So question number 1 is, what's the best way to watch It's Me, Billy Chapter 2? Believe it or not, I actually have received this question quite a few times. Well, listen, the best way to watch It's Me, Billy Chapter 2 is to first watch It's Me, Billy Chapter 1. And actually, believe it or not, why don't you just watch Black Christmas from 1974, then It's Me, Billy Chapter 1, then It's Me, Billy Chapter 2. And the reason for that, you don't want to watch It's Me, Billy Chapter 2 on its own if you've never seen It's Me, Billy. Or even if you've seen It's Me, Billy, but you haven't seen it in a few years, you want to watch it, you want to brush up on it, you want to get reacquainted with the film and the story and the details, because everything is connected. And although we released It's Me, Billy Chapter 2 as its own short film for obvious reasons, it really is just the last half of the movie, right? It's Me, Billy Chapter 1 is the first act and the first bit of the second act, and then Chapter 2 is the end of the second act and the third act. So if you were just to watch Chapter 2 on its own, it may feel like something's missing. It may feel a bit incomplete for you. But if you watch Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 together, you get a whole sense of the story, and I think it's really going to only enrich that experience for you when you watch It's Me, Billy Chapter 2. And like I said, watch all 3, Black Christmas Chapter 1 and then Chapter 2. Then you get the whole thing. Okay, question number 2 is, why are there no crazy phone calls? Where are the crazy phone calls in It's Me, Billy Chapter 2? Well, it kind of goes back to what I was talking about with the first question. You have to remember, this is just the last half of the movie. So technically, you've already had your phone calls, right? Because again, Chapter 1 is the first act and the beginning of the second act, and Chapter 2 is the end of the second act and the third act. So you've already had your phone calls. But we wanted to get something crazy and wild in there anyway, so the Billy dining room scene where we dive into his psychosis and into his mental state and the degradation of, you know, his cognitive abilities and where he is today and all the personalities, that really is your substitute for the crazy phone calls in It's Me, Billy Chapter 2, and it's really disturbing. So that's why, again, remember, Billy 1 and Billy 2, it's all one film. Really? Okay, question number 3 is, what was on that USB drive, Dave? Why didn't you guys reveal anything that was on that drive? It's just evidence, that's all we know. Well, actually, we did reveal some of what was on that drive. You have to be paying attention. Now, maybe if you're not a big Black Christmas fan, it goes over your head, fair enough. But if you're a big Black Christmas fan, you should have picked up on it. First of all, Bruce and I didn't want to reveal everything that was on that drive and let the cat out of the bag with everything, because we wanted to preserve the integrity of the ambiguity and the mystique of both Billy and Agnes, especially Billy. We wanted the movie to end with still that mystique intact. However, we wanted to give you a little bit of what was likely on that drive, and we did if you paid attention to the phone call at the end of the movie. Jess says, "I know who you are." Whoa, she knows who he is. "And I know what you and your sister have done." Oh my God, I know how she helped you. Whoa, the girl in the park. The policeman. Oh my God, and I know about all the others as well. Holy shit! I mean, maybe for an average horror fan, that doesn't mean much, but for Black Christmas fans, that's a bombshell. Jess Bradford just admitted on that phone that she knows that Agnes was in on the 1974 murders, that she knows that Agnes was the one that killed that girl in the park, that Agnes was the one that killed that police officer, and if you're a Black Christmas fan, you know what we're talking about. And it's like, oh my God, and how would she know that? Well, through the investigation that she was doing over the last while, and you know, it's pretty easy to assume that that information is part of what's on that USB drive, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. So everything else that you can imagine that is likely on that drive, it's probably on that drive. And then when Nancy takes the drive into her hand and she says, "What's this?" And Jess says, "It's everything." It's everything I discovered about that night. Well, what night is she talking about? The 1974 murders. It's everything. And the phone calls you just heard a few minutes earlier was just the tip of the iceberg. So we do tell you what is on that drive. We just don't spill it out for you. We just don't spoon feed it to you because we don't want to destroy the mystique. We want to give you a little bit, just enough to make you go, oh, fuck. And now you know that all that information is going to go into the hands of the police, and they're going to go back to the police station, download it, and reveal it to the world, and Jess and Nancy and Sam can finally rest. Wild. Okay, on to question number 4. How did Jess come upon this evidence? I mean, is she some kind of superhero? Is she some kind of Columbo? I mean, she's just some old lady. I mean, what is she doing out there? That doesn't make any sense. Folks, you have to remember that at the beginning of It's Me, Billy Chapter 2, when we see Nancy on her computer, and she's on the Bedford Chronicle website, during the close-up of the screen, in the bottom left corner, there's some juicy information. We find out that Jess was supposedly killed in a fiery car crash, which explains why there was no DNA, because later in the movie, Detective Henny says her body was burned beyond recognition. But in that same blurb, we also find out that Jess was a true crime author. And if you remember in Chapter 1, when we're first introduced to Agnes, Agnes says, I read all of her books, including the Belmont murders. The Belmont murders was the tell-all book. It was the first book that she ever wrote about that night, about her experience that night. It was the book, it was the catalyst that sprung her into superstardom and set her on the trajectory to becoming a true crime author. But she's written many, many books, and she was hugely successful. And when you're a hugely successful true crime author, you're basically an author / investigative journalist. So Jess possesses the abilities of a seasoned investigative journalist. This isn't her first rodeo. She's written many true crime books, right? She's investigated many different kinds of cases and cold cases and solved cases, and whatever the case is, she's seasoned. So she possesses the abilities to, poke around and sneak around, and she knows who to talk to. She's got many tricks up her sleeve. And with Nancy chirping at her over the years about how Peter was not the killer, I saw the killer that night, and with the 50th anniversary upon us, and with all those, people suddenly going missing, right? Jess decided to investigate. Jess decided to write again. Jess decided to look into it and see if there is any truth to what Nancy is saying, and finally clear Peter's name once and for all. And if you pay attention to the end of Chapter 1, when we're tracking along that desk in the attic, you see the manuscript. You see what she was writing. You see the title, Peter's Innocence. That was her new book, and she was assembling all the evidence that she had gathered into that new book. But she went down the rabbit hole too far. And if you pay attention to what Agnes says in the attic, she even says, I gotta hand it to you, Jess. Visiting my brother on my day off was very sneaky of you. Jess was at the psychiatric ward. She was sneaking around. She was looking into shit. She got too close. And question number 5, how did the eye on the fire poker, why is it facing front when it should be facing the other way? I don't get it. Well, Bruce and I talked about this at length in our stream, episode 288 of McRae Live. So if you want to know his thoughts and all the nitty-gritty details, because we dive into it, you can there. But I'll give you the Cliff Notes version here. So there's 2 reasons why it looks the way it does and why we did it the way we did. And the first reason, and the most important reason, is all about symbolism. The eye is the symbol of Black Christmas. The eye is the representation of Billy. It is, for all intents and purposes, his heart. So when you remove the eye, you remove his heart. His body no longer matters. You don't need to see his body. You don't need to see the hole. You don't need to see the blood. You don't need to see anything. The eye is what it's all about. It's cinematic language and it's symbolism. And speaking of cinematic language and symbolism, it was important for Bruce and I as writers and directors to not only have Jess be the one to kill Billy, but to kill him with a fire poker. The symbolism around that is huge when it comes to the Black Christmas universe. And when you attach that eyeball onto that fire poker, it brings it full circle. And the reason why we didn't impale the eye through the pupil with the poker is because we wanted the eye to be intact, to be able to, bring that symbolism and that cinematic language home. But we realized that if she went in through the eye through the front and pulled the eye out, just an in and out sort of motion, that the eyeball, well, technically, realistically, would be facing the other way. So instead of sticking the eyeball on the end of the poker, we stuck the eyeball on the hook of the poker, but not impaling impaling it on the hook, getting the tendons and the nerves wrapped around the hook in a scooping sort of way. So we imagine that the poker goes in, maybe the front end of the poker goes over the eye, and the scoop pulls the eye out. Maybe the end of the poker goes into the brain, and the scoop, the hook of the poker, pulls the eye out, and it spins it around, and it's facing, the front. That's the best way that we could do it, because at the end of the day, it is most important. The symbolism and the cinematic language is the most important. And you see creative liberties taken like that all the time in movies, all the time. And so that was the most important for us, was the symbolism and the meaning of that eye, and seeing that eye on the end of that poker, or on the hook of the poker, was very important to us. And the final question is, why was it Jess that killed Billy and not Sam? Believe it or not, some people have asked that, and that's fair, that's fair. I think it's self-explanatory, but for the purposes of this video, it was vitally important to Bruce and I that it be Jess be the one to kill Billy, because it brings it full circle, right? It brings it all home and connects it to the end of the 1974 original. And when you think about it, Jess being the one to kill Billy with the fire poker and the eyeball on the fire poker, I mean, the cinematic language and symbolism is just oozing in that moment and that scene. But it was equally important for us to have Sam be the one to kill Agnes, because from a certain point of view, when you think of what happened to the two of them, or between the two of them at the end of chapter 1, Agnes is kind of like Sam's monster and Billy is Jess's monster. And so when you think of Sam in chapter 1, she's going through a lot. She's lost her mother. She thinks she's lost her grandmother. She's about to lose her friends and her father. And, maybe she's not eating well. Maybe she's not sleeping well. She says, I really got to start taking care of myself. I don't want to end up like her, meaning her mother. Emma says, you're not like her. You're strong like your grandmother. And in this chapter, this is the moment when Sam has to discover that strength. Her arc is terrific. She has to, dive deep within herself in her most vulnerable moment. Her most rock bottom moment, lying on the ground in that basement with a bloody face, cold and dirty and all hope is lost, kind of thing. And then her friends' voices reach her from beyond the grave in her subconscious, right? In her memories, telling her that she's strong like her grandmother, that you are not alone. And then all of a sudden, she wakes up, right? She rises from the ashes like a phoenix, and she discovers that strength within her, thanks to her friends beyond the grave in her memory, and goes and does what she needs to do. And then, of course, she discovers the Christmas sweater, which is unbeknownst to her, the significance of it. She was just cold as she walked into the room, and she changed out of it to, Jesus, she's been down there all night. And then she's smashing the phone in the attic. That is the sorority house phone. The strength and the turnaround that she's discovering within herself is just awesome. But Billy had an edge on her. Billy had an edge on her, and if it wasn't for Jess, who knows what may have happened to Sam? But Jess came in and did what needed to be done. And so, the arc of Sam is one of my favorite pieces of the movie, and we're very proud of it, and it's pretty darn cool. So that is ultimately why Jess was the one who killed Billy, and Sam was the one who killed Agnes. Anyways, folks, my name's Dave McRae. So hopefully I've been able to give you some insight into those details and those nuances, where now that when you watch the movie again, you'll be able to pick up on those things and appreciate it even more. And look, there's no doubt that there are a lot of fans out there that have watched the movie and have picked up on those things. But I know that not everybody has, so, just remember that Bruce and I don't spoon feed you those details. It's also a short film, so there's only so much we can get into, but we want to give you enough. We want to put enough meat on the bone that it's all there. We just ask you to put your thinking cap on and really pay attention. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, folks, look, listen. Not everybody's going to like the art you put out into the world, and that's okay. But I appreciate you watching, and thank you to everybody who is enjoying the movie and all the positive feedback. We really appreciate it. Continue to watch the movie. Again, as of this video, it's closing in on 10,000 views in its first week. Amazing. Let's keep it going. You're amazing. If you want to follow me on social media, you can. All my links are in the description. Check them out until your heart's content. And when your heart is content, check them out again. That'll do it for me. In the meantime and in between time, I will talk to you soon. It's me, Billy. Cheers.